some of the Republican Party are still resisting Donald Trump. Paul Ryan saying, oh, you know, I'm going to have to look at his position, see if they line up with Republican values. And now they're trying to rip him down. Sarah Palin supporting a primary run against Paul Ryan. And Trump saying him, you know, being in charge of the convention. Well, the Speaker of the House, that's normally what would happen. He's like, well, I'm going to have to look at that. And they're going to have a meeting on Thursday. And if he doesn't do the right thing, Trump says he could change his mind on that the minute after. Okay, so those threats are in. And some are still resisting it. Not John McCain, though. Oh, this is super sad. He has been broken. So he is now out there saying, yes, he will bow his head and support Donald Trump. Oh, okay, let's watch.
I think it's important for Donald Trump to express his appreciation for veterans, not John McCain, but veterans who were incarcerated as prisoners of war. What he said about me, John McCain, that's fine. Yeah, I don't require any repair of that. But when he said, I don't like people who were captured, then there's a body of American heroes that I'd like to see him retract that statement.
Now I'm going to show you at the end why he's going in Trump's direction. But here, he still has his reservations, right, when it comes to people like him. Now, is he going to continue to have reservations when it comes to people that are not like him, like Mexicans? Let's find out.
Would you be helpful? Would you want him to retract those statements he made, specifically about undocumented Mexican immigrants, when he called them, you know, rapists and criminals? Would you want him to retract those statements?
Oh, I don't know. I think that it's important that we understand the importance of the Hispanic vote in America. In many states, they grow. In Arizona, more than 50% of the kids in school are Hispanic. After the 2012 election, as you know, we laid out a blueprint, and part of it was outreach to the Hispanic community. I think we all recognize that the Republican Party has to do that.
And he does, too.
I assume so.
Mm-hmm.
I assume so. I don't want to criticize him, though, because I'm broken. So people like me, oh, no, he should retract those statements. Other people, I don't know. I mean, against the Mexicans, I don't know. That's up to him. He's my new boss. Now, you know, John McCain is running for re-election in Arizona, too. The reason he's doing all this and bowing his head is because he doesn't want to piss off Trump voters for fear they won't vote for him and he'll lose his seat. Oh, that's so sad. Have him explain it to you himself. Watch.
You have to draw the conclusion that there is some distance, if not a disconnect, between party leadership and members of Congress and many of the voters who have selected Donald Trump to be the nominee of the party.
And should your leadership listen to those folks a little bit better?
You have to listen to people that have chosen the nominee of our Republican Party. I think it would be foolish to ignore them.
Apparently the voters like Trump. What am I going to do? I'm going to do whatever the new boss man says. The North Vietnamese couldn't break him in 5 years. Donald Trump broke him in 5 months. It's one of the saddest things I've ever seen. I voted for John McCain in the primaries back in 2000 when I was still a Republican. And I was proud of that vote. And then when he lost, I voted for Gore because I couldn't countenance voting for someone as dense as George W. Bush. Now, Donald Trump knows less about policy than George W. Bush does. Yet here's McCain bowing his head to him because he doesn't want to alienate those rabid Republican voters who also might vote for him or stay at home or even vote against him. If Trump were to come out and say, John McCain has been very, very unfair to me. You know, I'm not sure he's the guy to support. That might be the end of McCain's political career. But my God, man, what are you doing? Is your political career at this late stage that important to you? And the reality is for politicians, and you will see with almost the entire Republican Party, the answer is an overwhelming yes. Yes, their political career is that important to them. There's nothing they won't stoop to.